Open your ears and lube up your butthole. It's time for the What Do We Call It podcast. Now, here's your host. It's Jmann. Welcome to the What Do We Call It podcast. I'm Jmann, flying solo for this one and talking about some recent events in the greater Minneapolis area. What specifically? Well, the other day there was a robbery spree of about 14 incidents, and I'd just like to talk about that and some places where my mind went after hearing about it. So here it goes. Police arrested 3 juveniles the other day and are seeking at least 2 more in a connection to a string of 14 reported robberies that occurred Sunday, some of them at gunpoint. Now, when I say Sunday, I mean February 25th of 2024 is when this shit went down. So MPD said there were 6 robberies Sunday morning, followed by another 8 that night. 4 occurred within 18 minutes Sunday morning in the 5th Precinct, the same area where another string of robberies occurred earlier this month, including one at gunpoint. Wonder if they're linked. Probably because these kids get away with it and they think they're going to do it again because they think they're badasses. Moving on. 30 minutes later, police say a carjacking occurred in northeast Minneapolis, followed by a nearby armed robbery 15 minutes after that. Police say they believe the vehicle stolen in the carjacking was used in the armed robbery that occurred in northeast Minneapolis. Later Sunday in northeast again, there were 4 more robberies, including 2 at gunpoint. Around 8:30 p.m., an additional 4 armed robberies were reported. Within the span of a few minutes, one of the suspects stole a car and crashed it that night as well. Chief O'Hara said the department enacted recently adopted protocol Sunday where officers responding to non-emergency calls got redirected to the area of the crime spree. So what they mean by that is when the shit hits the fan, everybody that's not on an emergency call gets redirected to that area to focus on trying to find anybody involved, which is good because it's like an APB and you're creating a hot zone. Within that perimeter, you're trying to catch whoever the fuck is responsible for this shit. However, there's just one caveat. That leaves a bunch of other parts of the city undefended as everybody just kind of descends upon that one spot. You know, think about this. What if they create a situation where they want to distract you with a diversion to go to one spot so they can commit 3 other crimes of a similar nature in 3 other spots in a part of the city that are relatively adjacent, but you're not going to be looking for them there and you're not going to be watching them as closely because you're too busy hunting for them where they pointed you. These things could happen. I didn't have to be Batman, the world's greatest detective, to connect the dots on that shit. Anybody that has watched any amount of crime shows or even some cartoons know how a diversion works. It's not fucking Harvard-level math. So now that I got that point, let me keep going with what I got from this story, which came from the Star Tribune, by the way. During Sunday's press conference about the incidents, Chief O'Hara said the pattern police have seen involves groups of juveniles driving around in stolen vehicles, sometimes in groups, and they'll circle an area or neighborhood and just descend upon where they have sat there and kind of sussed out where they want to strike or who was in the area. And investigators believe all of the victims Sunday were women. So, yay! Less safe to be a female in Minneapolis all of a sudden, even more than it already fucking was. Isn't that great? So what do we got is a bunch of kids doing these crimes. Obviously, beginning of the thing, I said they arrested juveniles. They're looking for more. These are dumb young kids that like idolize gang culture and like GTA way too much. Just committing crimes for fun, for clout. I'm guessing they were probably caught because they were bragging about it or showing videos on social media because that generation just cannot stop fucking showing everybody every dumbass thing they do all the motherfucking time and getting themselves in trouble. And furthermore, I just feel like as much as some people say you just need to give these kids something to focus on and make them feel cared about, this is an entire generation of inner city youth that don't give a fuck whatsoever and they think it's hilarious to do this shit. And the reason this is happening is because we have all these Democrats in office that have all these soft on crime policies, and they're like, well, if somebody does one bad thing, we don't want it to ruin their entire life. So, you know, you'll notice in all these stories and on all the message boards and all the comment boards for all the stories of crimes like this and similar incidents, everyone's like, they'll probably be out within a day or 2 anyway. And frequently they're just juveniles and they give them some sort of fine or probation and cut them loose. They're back on the street way too fast. so they can go out there and commit more fucking crimes. So now here's where I want to go with this. After recently watching The First Purge and noticing that in the movie they were focusing on the low-income, inner-city, people of color neighborhoods on Staten Island in that film, you've got these hot crime areas where all this shit goes down, and then it starts to bleed into the adjacent suburbs. Like recently there's been strings of robberies in Edina, of all places, and all the pearl-clutching cake eaters like, oh, not around here. Yes, around there. They're driving into your neighborhood, and they are casing the joints, finding out who's got outside cameras, neutralizing that threat with spray paint or covering them or something, and then coming back and quickly just mob robbing the house. If you watch videos like I do on Twitter, you see all the time people post videos of groups of young black youth. Sorry, anybody that doesn't want to hear what color their skin is, but this is what I'm seeing. Black youth in mobs, robbing stores, running in, grabbing as much shit as they can, and running out. Apple stores, Nike stores, shoe stores, electronics, shit like that. Predominantly, when I see videos of brazen thieves, unfortunately, they are young people of color. So again, this is a segment of an entire generation that doesn't give a fuck. And it's not because they're disenfranchised from systemic racism or being downtrodden from generational poverty. No, this is, they got nothing better to do. They don't want to be productive members of society, and you're not slapping them on the wrist hard enough to scare them. So they're just going to keep doing it. And here's where we're going with this. I brought up the purge. I'm not saying we need to do a purge. This is what I'm saying. In the comment sections, on Reddit, in these boards, for these stories, on Twitter, all these people are saying we should do all these things to violently neutralize these young thugs, that we should take care of these criminals. And I'm seeing more and more and more of it, to the point where it's getting way too frequent and common and loud to ignore. And I kind of feel like society is getting to the point where people are so fed up, and the cops are constantly undermanned because nobody wants to be a police officer because of what happened after the George Floyd thing, and they don't want to have to arrest somebody that doesn't look like them and then accidentally do something that lands them in prison, where they will be beaten and raped or possibly stabbed nearly to death, like what happened to Derek Chauvin, which I will cover in a very near episode after this, because that's a whole fucking can of worms. My point being is, what you're going to see is, air quotes here, patriots or vigilante justice is going to start to happen. And I'm not entirely against the idea, unfortunately. Let's say you got a truck full of good old boys with their fucking guns, and they are going to drive through the hood looking for people committing crimes, hoping that they can catch them. Maybe they will go full-on stealth mode and dress in all black during the night and hide out and creep around corners and start neutralizing these threats, or just beating the fuck out of them and leaving them in the street as an example. When the government doesn't take care of its people, the ones that get fed up enough to take action, of which I believe there are at least a third of the population that be willing to do this, will then spring out to hand out fucking vigilante justice and beatdowns to scare the criminals. And honestly, is that a bad thing? Like, we talk about we're a civilized nation and everybody deserves their day in court. But I myself am getting to the point where I'm not saying I'm going to go out there and beat the shit out of criminals like I think I'm Batman or something, or some, street tough. What I am saying, though, is that I'd be fine if a bunch of militias decided to go into the hood, catch these fuckers, maybe pop a few of them off, unfortunately for their families, set an example. And maybe you start a war between those that don't care and those that do. It would be criminals versus patriots, really. I'm not going to paint colors on this, because it's not just blacks that live in those neighborhoods. There's also Somalis, so African blacks, or Hispanics. There's all kinds of people in these neighborhoods. And there's people in adjacent suburbs that don't want this shit spilling over to their neighborhoods. And they might be the taken action type that are just so fucking fed up, they're going to do something about it. And they'll call some of their buddies, or maybe they got a crazy cousin or a brother or somebody that was in the military, somebody with some weapons expertise, somebody that just wants to beat the shit out of criminals. Somebody that wants to play hero like Kyle Rittenhouse did in Milwaukee. Look what happened to his fucking life. This is what's probably going to end up happening. I honestly believe, especially if Trump gets reelected. unfortunately, because if he wins again, it does not seem like he has anybody's best interest in mind besides his own. And a lot of his MAGA faithful are these very hyper-patriotic types that want to take back the country from the criminals, from the poor element, from those that want to make the rest of our lives hell. And it's hard to not want to get behind those people because I want my neighborhood to be safe for my kids. I don't want to have to worry that if they go to the park, they're going to get beat up and their bikes stolen because I have mostly girls. I don't want to have to feel like when I go downtown to Minneapolis for a concert or parts of St. Paul that I have to constantly look over my shoulder like a fucking insane person high on an 8-ball of coke, just spinning in circles, watching for who the hell's coming around. Because I came out of a show back in October, and it was at Amsterdam, which is a few blocks from the Social Security Administration. And walking back to the fucking parking garage, we come out and these two nasty fucking stinky crusted up white boys that clearly were meth heads are coming out of the fucking side door of the parking ramp. And immediately I clutched my wallet with one hand and I clenched my fist with the other, and I was ready to fucking rock because I don't want to be a victim. And a lot of people have that mentality that I don't want this to happen. Now you'll get a number of crybaby, bleeding heart liberals that think we just need to continue with this hug-a-thug mentality, and if you treat them like good people, they'll be good people. But frankly, those people are not living in reality. Okay, what color's the fucking sky in your world if you think all it takes is to just be nice to a gangbanger and they'll turn it all around? This isn't the movie Meteor Man, you dumb fucks. This is reality, where these people don't fucking care, and some of them will kill. They'll maim, they'll beat, they'll rape, because it's funny to them. Because they think, oh, look at me. I'm so tough and I'm a thug. I'm going to get street cred for this shit. So once again, it lends back to my point. I feel like it's going to take one incident for this shit to pop off, no matter where in America. But Minneapolis, after the whole George Floyd thing and the riots, everybody's real tense around these parts and saying that, you know, we failed the police and administration didn't have the backs of those officers, and MPD is a shell of what it used to be based upon how many officers quit or retired or relocated elsewhere because they couldn't stand administration not having their backs. So because everybody knows there's not enough cops and the cops are hesitant to engage people because they don't want to end up accidentally killing somebody or doing something where they end up on camera and their whole life is turned upside down, you get the cops walking on eggshells, which then just emboldens the criminals. And every time these fuckers do these robbing sprees, these carjacking sprees, they get a slap on the wrist, they're back out on the street, there's no real fucking punishment, nobody wants to pay to house these fuckers, but they also don't want to, quote, ruin their lives because, you know, they still have a chance to amount to something, because apparently in some idiot far-left woke scold's eyes, these are the future leaders of the world somehow. They're not. But you've got just all these young kids with nothing to do, they don't want to work, they want to have fun, and to them fun is fucking around and finding out by committing crimes. And they don't care about hardworking people. They don't care about you and me who follow the law and the rules and we don't go out there and hurt people. And then what you're going to do while emboldening the criminals is you're going to equally embolden to the point of radicalizing, mostly, I'm assuming, gun-toting white rednecks or people that live in the suburbs with family members and friends that are gun-toting white rednecks that are going to show up in the hood, and the shit's going to hit the fan. And I don't want to use the term race war, but like I said, class war, or almost like a war of ideologies where those people say, well, we've been held down and kept in abject poverty, and nobody wants to help us rise above our station, so fuck you, we're going to do what we want. And those people are like, hey, get over it. None of your family were slaves. That shit was so long ago. You have no excuse to do this to hardworking, honest people. Now it's our turn to make you feel scared. And a lot of individuals in this country are just waiting for that shit to happen. And it's exciting because it's like it could bring about serious change. It's terrifying to think how much bloodshed could be in the streets while it's happening in the process of trying to cull all these groups of extreme criminals and extreme patriots. It's an election year. Oh, God damn it. It's just, at all times, my butthole is proverbially puckered because you don't know when shit's going to pop off. We live in a gun-crazy country. And now we get all these criminals, and they don't just do it in the hood, they bring it to the suburbs because they know that they can commit crimes, run out of a store. Like I saw at the Plymouth Target a few months ago, a group of kids pushing 3 carts full of shit just dashed out the door brazenly. I'm willing to bet they didn't fucking live around there. And then they hop in a car and they drive away and back to where they live. They're committing crimes where you and I work and reside, not where they live. And it's just making life for everybody in the outer ring suburbs or the first ring suburbs hell. So I wish that something would happen systemically with the government in terms of criminal justice reform, not to give people more chances or to stop giving bail to poor people that are minorities, but holding everybody accountable. And like I always say when we get on these topics, I cannot stress enough how much I wish there was a federally mandated death penalty that for certain crimes, let's say you got an illegal immigrant who comes here, commits a violent crime or a rape, fucking execute him. Fast track that bitch. You get no due process. You are not a citizen of this country. You have no rights. Take them, hang them, leave their body to swing in the fucking breeze for a few days while the birds peck their eyes out and go for the soft tissue. Let them be a fucking warning to all these people that come here looking to commit crimes that cross our borders from other parts of the world that say they're from here or there, but they're really from somewhere else. And all we do is catch them, send them back. They change their look, they come in with a new identity, and they fucking do it again. We need to do something to protect Americans besides just saying, well, we don't want poor blacks to feel bad. Well, technically, I don't either, but if they're the ones committing most of the crimes, especially poor young blacks or poor black youth, we got to do something to get through to them. And unfortunately, before we get through to them, I think somebody else is going to steamroll them. And he's just like, waiting for the fireworks to start on the 4th of July, eh? Interact with the show on Twitter at What Do We Call It? That is at What Do We Call It? You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/group/What Do We Call It podcast show. For the What Do We Call It podcast, I'm Jmann. And that's the end.